G'day everyone, and welcome to the third episode of the Positive EV podcast. My name is Francis III, your main host, and today with me I have a special guest who I'll let introduce himself.
Um, I appreciate you special. I hope that wasn't said in jest, but I am is outsourced. I have some financial experience, which is unusual for snowmen, I guess.
Oh, your mic's cutting out a little bit.
Is it? How about now?
Should be that sounds better. All right, so yeah, you're outsourced. You're a frosty snowman who has some experience in the financial world.
Um, so there were a couple questions I got asked that always get asked, which generally revolve around what do I invest in the stock market, and
Mm-hmm.
how do I become a millionaire or a billionaire? Um, I don't I don't know how to tell people that they're not going to be a billionaire in their lifetime. It's a little difficult to do that. There's something like, I don't know, like 10,000 of them in the
Yeah,
world.
out of the seven
Uh,
billion people that exist.
yeah, millionaires totally possible though, and I don't want to clickbait, but I give you 5 easy steps to become a millionaire.
Five easy
Um,
steps. All right, everybody,
yeah,
we're ready for.
five easy steps are, the first one, the first one is be born a millionaire. That's the easiest one. But if you can't do that and you've already failed at that one, step number two it is step number two is to understand that you're not going to become a millionaire right now, regardless of what you do. Again, not always true, right? There are one or two people who will win the lottery.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah, but it's only like one or two.
yeah. Uh, any, I don't know how you're from Australia, right? I don't know if you guys run crazy lotteries like we do in the United States, where the prize pool goes up to $200 million. But here
I
in the
think
U.S.,
our highest prize pool's gotten to like 65 million. Um,
yeah, here US, it's like a one in, I've done the math, but it's like 1 in 378 million
yeah,
chance
it's
when
something
you
dumb
purchase a
here
lottery
too.
ticket to. So given that, you could continuously buy lottery tickets and hope that you'll strike it rich, or you can, develop and start to invest in both yourself and businesses and companies and the stock market and
So,
real estate.
so
And
what?
hopefully by the end of that,
If you don't mind my asking, what experience do you have with investing?
so my undergraduate degree is in finance. I've worked trying to do this without doxing myself. I've worked
Yeah, that's
I've
okay.
worked I I've worked in the finance industry for a couple of years, and now I guess my term is a business analyst, an operations analyst.
Yep.
Um, so I have some experience. I'm not just some
So,
random person screaming in a podcast channel, but
oh, like me, huh?
yeah,
Huh?
I mean, I think I've seen advice you've given. It's pretty much what I just paid someone to explain it to me slowly, as opposed to you kind of picked it up immediately. But yeah, becoming a millionaire, it's really not that hard. Especially not hard if you just take, uh, you want to become a nominal millionaire. So if 20 years from now you want to say I want to own $1 million or $1 million dues or whatever it is that you have in Australia,
On dollar
really
dues
not
can
that
confirm.
hard.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it just takes time.
exactly.
Like nobody in their 20s. Like look at your famous figures like Gary V, your big talkers. Um, there's like Jason Chung from Canada. There's a few that have become very, very successful, wealthy people, but hell, in their 20s, they're like, nah, I'm just working my butt off. I know I'm not going to be rich now.
Yeah, and I think this kind of goes to the larger point that I'm, weaving my way towards, which is becoming a billionaire is almost impossible. Becoming a millionaire is possible if you work towards it and you're disciplined and you focus. But ultimately, what it is that you need to decide before you plan out the next 20 years of your life with investments is deciding exactly what it is that your goal is, right?
Yeah,
If you want to try to be a billionaire, by all means do it, but understand that the path to become a billionaire is much, much different than the path to secure your retirement. and become a millionaire by the time you're, I don't know, 40 or 45.
Do you not have to make friends with some particular nation's governments to become a billionaire?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the way I think of it is, have you ever heard the question, like, would you rather have a penny that doubles every day for 30 days or $1 million?
Oh yes, I've heard.
Yeah,
that
and
question.
everyone knows at this point, at least I hope you know at this point, that you should take the penny because after 30 days it's worth about 1.9 million dollars, and if you or 1 point, whatever. If you continue to compound it though, right? At a certain point, if you think of it as you making all-in bets on a coin flip, right? The chance of you doubling your money from a penny all the way up to $1 million. Well, if you start with $1 instead of that 1 penny, your total return after doubling it 30 times is 100 million. And if you start with $10, you're at $1 billion. So it's incredibly unlikely, right?
Yeah.
But if you ignore all the people who failed at becoming a billionaire and you constantly make very risky all-in bets over and over, and as long as you're lucky,
like
right,
Clutch
you can
Case.
become a billionaire. Right. So
that's not happening.
So if you want to become a billionaire, right, that path to get there is
that's a generational
different
path.
because it is, and the path to get there though requires you to make different decisions and be far riskier than the path to become, I would say, upper middle class or wealthy.
Yeah.
And ultimately that comes down to, it comes back to one of the I'm going to say the word, I swear it, guys, that, expected value of what your decision making.
He said the word.
What is that you're investing? I did say the word.
He said the word.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure chat's gonna start spamming. There we go.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So
right?
we're getting some positive.
So you could
chat.
So you could make, compounding all-in bets that have to go right, and you could become a billionaire. But again, the chance of that happening is so infinitesimally small, though, that goes against what's optimal, right? So there's a bunch of eggheads. If you ever heard of the term Kelly criterion, Kelly criterion is essentially if you understand the expected value of a bet or a binary option. So either it happens or it doesn't, right? And you know what the probability is and what your there is a specific bet amount depending on the odds and depending on what the intrinsic odds are and what the odds that are offered to you are, that will maximize your return.
Yep.
And that number usually ranges anywhere from like 1% to 20% of your total your total whatever it is that you're betting with. And this is more of a degenerate gambling thing, but
we don't gamble.
It's the same thing across it's the same thing across the financial world, right? Like if you talk about Sharpe ratios and unit risk and volatility and all those other fancy words that people build a portfolio around,
fancy
Kelly
Wall
criterion.
Street, New York words.
Right. So
why you're paying a mutual
why you're paying a mutual fund manager 2% of your money to do something that we'll get to that. Trust me, we'll get to that.
Side note on mutual funds. No, this is totally not financial advice, but never ever buy a mutual fund.
Yeah. Again, everything that I'm saying is not financial advice. I am a snowman. He is a cat. Do not listen to what we were saying. Make your own decisions. This is two unlikely friends, much like the Fox and the Hound, giving you advice that we are wholly unqualified to give you. Regardless,
Absolutely.
Kelly criterion, right?
Yeah.
So if you're trying to become a billionaire, and you try to follow the Kelly criterion, I almost guarantee you that you will not have enough opportunities to make a positive return to become a billionaire before you die. That's just math and money not compounding fast enough for you to be able to do that. And again, this goes back to my point of one of the first things you have to do if you want to become a successful investor is understanding what your risk tolerance is. And the way you understand what your risk tolerance is you set your goal beforehand. So if I want to become a billionaire, I can't waste my time betting 5% or 10% of my money because I need to make all-in bets every single time, and I need to be correct every single time if I want to become a billionaire.
Right.
Now, because you're not making the ideal investment in this case, the ideal bet would be to follow the Kelly criterion. Your expected return from trying to become a billionaire decreased because you're not being efficient with your money. The chance of you failing out increases as your goal gets higher. So internally, what it is that you need to do is set a reasonable expectation for what it is that for what it is that you want to accomplish in life. And that doesn't necessarily mean I want to become a 100 millionaire or 10 millionaire. There's plenty of life goals that don't revolve around money, and
Absolutely.
many people find yeah, and many people find that uh, I want to make a lot of money, and then they get there and they're ultimately unhappy because they made decisions that either affect them morally or they sacrificed relationships that they would otherwise not do. I think my going back to the lottery, my favorite example that I give people is that the average happiness of people who won the lottery 3 months after they won the lottery is the same or lower than it was
Yeah.
before they won it.
Yes.
People who win the lottery are not happier. It's
Pe-
crazy.
People
And
who
that's
win the
and
lottery, they also don't know how to use their money.
yeah,
They've just been
absolutely,
handed
because
a
you're
pile of cash with no education.
right. And also because people who use the lottery self-select for people who make bad financial decisions. So they usually go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Like the people who are constantly winning the lottery are the people who are addicted to gambling and don't understand that the lottery is a terrible investment. Do not play the lottery. Um, but yeah, the people who win end up not being any significantly happier. So I think that it's like hedonic adaptation is the term if you want the fancy psychologist thing. And that
Oh,
essentially says that money alone, and again, there's a cutoff, right? So in the United States, it's something like 100 or $125,000 in income per year is usually enough where after that your happiness stops rising.
yeah.
So I don't know, Fry, have you heard of the 4% rule? Do you know what that
I
implies?
have heard of the 4% rule. That's actually what my end goal for my financial freedom is going to be. So my current goal using the 4% rule, which we'll explain in a minute, is to be able to have enough of passive income where taking 4% of my assets out, I get $100,000 a year as just my living income, and I'll never run out of money. I don't have to work ever again.
Yeah,
So,
exact. So do you want to give like an
I'll,
explanation? I
let's
can.
give a cat's explanation, and then you can correct me
Okay.
if I'm. The snowman can get cold with me and discuss this 4% rule. So my understanding of the 4% rule is, however much money you have invested, you can take 4% of that money out each year, in be that in dividends, rent payments, however you choose, selling stocks. You can take 4% of it out, and with inflation, with your expected value, uh, you're not actually going to run out of money ever. So if you've got say $4 million invested, 4% of that is about 120,000, $125,000. You can take that out once you hit $4 million of total investments for the rest of your life, and you'll never run out of money.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty good description of it. The way we get to 4%. Yeah, that is the underlying concept. Yeah. But the way we get to 4% is some egghead, I forget his name, back in the 90s when finance started becoming an actual field and not just a bunch of you know, rich people kind of drinking and talking about their investments. Someone went back and they said, okay, the average retirement in the United States is 30 years. So let me make a portfolio of half stocks, half bonds,
Yeah.
excuse me, U.S. government bonds, and then just see how much I can take out per year on a 30-year rolling basis and not run out of money. So what he did was he took returns from 1926 to 1956, 1927 to 1957, all the way through, and then found what was the minimum amount, or sorry, the maximum amount that you could withdraw yearly over that 30-year period and still not go broke. And the number he got for U.S. equities was 4%. Now, if you run that using a longer time frame, you start getting anomalies, right? So you start getting stuff like 2008 and
Yeah.
the Great Depression, and so using a full data set that goes all the way from as of right now going back, depending on the country that you're in, it can change. So the other fun thing is that there's only 4 countries actually where you could continue to withdraw, and you would get your withdrawal rate would be anything above 3%, and those are Canada, the U.S., New Zealand, and Denmark, I believe.
Yeah.
So those are the 4 countries where the 4% rule kind of holds true. Pretty much every other country needs to diversify globally, and hold a better basket. But essentially, the idea is
Were you
at a certain
talking
point
shit
when you
about
have enough
Australia?
money, New Zealand, not Australia.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was saying you're
but
talking
but
shit.
the concept holds true,
Yeah,
and I think the other thing with that portfolio is it's very conservative. It's 50% stock, 50% treasuries. If you can build your portfolio in a way that doesn't require you to start withdrawing early,
yeah,
so if you can lower your withdrawals during bad times and expand your withdrawals during good times, you can end up with a higher total return across the period. Again, that's like a financial decision. But to get back to the point, right? If what I'm saying is true, which is that generally people don't end up being any happier after they make about $100,000 in real U.S. dollars, and the 4% rule is true, that means that when you retire, inflation adjusted, if you have something that gives you that, that $100,000 in income that you need, and you use a 4% withdrawal rate, then really after that, anything past that is just you having set a goal for yourself that you think will make you happier in the future. So if you
yeah.
do the math right, 100,000, that's 2.5 million is what you need,
Two and a half
I believe,
million
if
US.
my math on the top of my head. So you need about $2.5 million in today's money to be able, to get $100,000
Yeah,
real instead of nominal in the future, right? So for most people, if they ask me, how much money should I be saving, it's find yourself an amount of money that when you retire, you're at $2.5 million
yeah. Could you
in
correct?
real terms.
So correct me if I'm wrong. There's something. So a lot of our listeners here are very young. They're in their teens to early 20s. There aren't many people who are in part of this Discord, the CS:GO Market Forum, who are going to be in their 30s or older. So
Yeah, and I think
there's something that they need to learn, which is that you need, when you're investing, is it takes a lot of time. You're not going to see any good returns for 5-10 years at least. You're not going to really
yeah,
see
and
the compound effect work.
yeah, absolutely. And it's, if you invested $1 in the S&P 500 30 years ago, right? Your $1 today, or your $1 30 years ago, would be worth $29 today. And obviously that doesn't include inflation, right?
Yeah,
That's nominal. So it's something like 15 times had you just invested it and waited, right? But if you only had $1 in
yeah, you're
in
better off.
1990, yeah, in 1991, you would have been better off not wasting your time investing and focused more on developing something that can make you more money than, constantly checking your $1 investment to see how it's doing.
Yeah,
And
investing
like,
in yourself.
no, exactly, sorry, excuse me.
That's right.
Exactly. And oh, there's a pigeon on my windowsill. Interesting. Sorry,
I mean,
I get distracted very
I'm
easily.
in
You
Australia.
get
I've
that?
got spiders in the room that I'm in. It's whatever.
Yeah.
Spider
So,
versus pigeon.
so I'll take the pigeon. Yeah. So my point, I guess, is that, and what I'm building towards is if you work backwards, right, and you say, okay, I need $2.5 million when I retire. Okay, how do I get there? There's two different ways to get there, right? You can either get there the fastest way, which is be a freak and work 80 hours a day, 80 hours a week, and save all of your money and don't spend
Not
anything and
healthy for
try to
you.
retire early, which is incredibly not healthy and probably takes years off of your lifespan and is awful. You could do that. I wouldn't recommend it, right? Or you could try to plot out your future income and then say, okay, I'm going to spend about, I don't know, let's say just keep the numbers easy. I'm going to spend
Yeah.
$25,000 a year, which is not a lot. You're probably in a low cost of living area. I'm going to make $50,000 a year pre-tax. Post-tax, let's say that's 40. I'm going to save $15,000 a year. When can I retire? Right. So you would project out and you would say, okay, it's going to grow at a 6% interest rate for 25 years, and that 25 or 30 years, and that kind of gets you there, right?
Yeah.
Um, Now, if again, because most of the people who are in this, who are listening right now are probably very young and they're, in their teens or early 20s. My advice, again, like we talked about before, just because money compounds significantly over a 30-year period doesn't mean that it's your best investment. And especially for people who are listening and, don't have a college degree or don't have a career that they can really follow. And again, I say college degree because that's something that most people can understand. But things like, being in a trade, having some sort of skill set that you've developed that's valuable, right? Those are
Yeah.
things that can't be taken away from you. And while investing is fun, and I'm sure for people, in their teens, it's a way to see money increase without them doing anything. Ultimately, you have to think about what the best investment with your time is, because right now the most abundant asset that you have is your time. You don't really have a lot of money when you're in your teens and early 20s. So what you can spend is that sweat equity, right? It's deciding what I'm going to spend my day on.
Mm.
So my advice, and again, this is not financial advice. This is me
I'd
being a
like to
boomer
provide some
explaining things to you.
advice after as well.
If you're in your early teens and 20s and you find finance interesting, start thinking about what is it that I find interesting about it, and deciding how can I use that to find a career that will put me on the path that I don't have to work until I'm 65 or 70, and I don't have to work 80 hours a week to get there. So for me, sorry, excuse me.
Oh, okay. So while Outsourced is busy,
Yeah, I'm
busy
I'm
coughing
back.
up a lung. Okay, all good. Keep going.
um, so for me, I can really only give people examples that I did. Was I got my degree in finance. I started working in finance. It was awful. The hours were long, and I
How long
didn't
till you
enjoy it.
leave finance?
So 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 I didn't. Well, I wouldn't say I left finance. I switched careers. I took a pay cut, and I do like business consulting.
Nice.
Um, I don't work 70, 80 hours a week. I am able to develop my skill set by giving other people advice on how to run their business. And, for me, ultimately, the goal is I do this internal calculation in my head too. And it's something that I really think everyone should do. Maybe not internally, but try to write it down and have a plan. But my goal is, to not be working when I'm 60. It's to be retired on a beach somewhere. And I have a dollar number in mind that I need. And I
Yeah.
sat down and said, sure, I could continue to work in finance and make, probably in a couple of years, I'll be making a $250,000 a year. Or I could spend that time developing a skill that I enjoy, which is, running a business and understanding how to operate a business. And then long term, when I plot out how it is that, I intend to make my money and save it, I kind of got to the same number. So
Yeah.
ultimately, trying to chase just the paycheck might actually make you, going back to happiness and things like that, might actually make you more unhappy, and also not get you any quicker to where it is that you're trying to get. So ultimately, a lot of when you talk about, investing advice, so much of it isn't investments, right? Like so much of it is not just being like, I'm going to invest in cruise ships because the cruise industry is poised for a rebound. So much of it isn't that. So much of it is setting a realistic goal for yourself and then working backwards, right?
Yeah, that's something that I've noticed is what you've got. Once you actually figure out how much do I need to live a happy life, you can work from there and go, okay, so if I want this, I want to earn enough. How much? Like, if I want to earn enough from my investments, you can work out how much you need from there, with an expected like time period of not running out of money, things like that, and uh, I've I've worked out I'd like about 120,000 a year for myself and keep family happy. Um, there's a couple of interesting calculators. You look at for young people, have a look at the compound interest calculators. Um, you can play around with how much money you're depositing and how long a time period it is till you retire. So you'll be able to see the effect of compound interest on and why it's important to start early. So I've got. So I would like say $4 million Australian gives me about 125,000 in Australian Robux for money each year. Um, Looking at what I need to do, if I put in $500 a month, your average interest rate is 10% on if you're doing stocks, bonds. General investments of the market is typically it's typically 10% before your inflation adjustment, which is like 2-3% a year. Here's a link to the compound interest calculator in chat. So I've put in initial deposit $0. Let's assume everybody here's broke. You've got $0 to invest. You put in $500 a month. So out of each of your weekly, bi-weekly paychecks, just split it up however you can. In 40 years, in 38 years, you'll hit Outsourced's goal of $2.5 million, which gives you your 100,000 a year to play with. For me, at 4 million, to hit that $4 million mark, I need only 43 years. So this does apply to most countries. So with investments, it's not going to be you're not going to get a perfect curve. You can agree with that, Outsourced. It's never going to be a perfect.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Perfect curve.
If you do find a perfect curve, please tell me, because I would be literally like, that is how you become a billionaire.
That, yeah.
If you can find an investment with no volatility and a curve that is giving you 5% return a year, by all means, please.
Yeah.
You would literally redefine finance as a profession. So
So and you can see the effect that only a few years makes, where you've got $2.5 million at 38 years, but 5 years later you'll have over $4 million. So you've earned yourself you've earned yourself $1.5 million in 5 years by putting in $500 a month. It just takes time. It's not anything massive.
Yeah,
in my country, it's not anything particularly massive. So I can work from there and figure out a job that I want to do, that I can just do that with. I don't have to work in finance. I don't have to work as something that's really, really high earning,
but soul sucking. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have to work something that's soul sucking. I can work something that I just enjoy. And that.
Yeah, and no, sorry.
Oh, you go.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, you can work something that's both fulfilling and is giving you happiness right now, as well as sets you up for a retirement that doesn't involve you living off of whatever pension plan it is or Social Security, as it is in the United States.
Yeah, this is like anyone. You can work any job. You can work at a local grocer. You can work as a labourer. You can work as anything. You just have to be able to know how much you're going to invest every month. If you can, and make sure you've earned that amount of money. Something else, people say that they never have enough money to invest. It doesn't have to be much to start with. Like $500 in an entire month is pretty reasonable to achieve. But at the start, it is difficult. It is very difficult to start with. You go, how am I meant to earn money? There are small things you can do. If you've got, for example, Facebook, something I've seen that has worked fantastically well for making these earliest pieces of money to invest with and use is just type free on the Facebook marketplace. Like, literally, just go get everything that's free on Facebook, turn around and sell it for a few bucks. Like, it doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be super soul-sucking.
Yeah, exactly. And ultimately, that, when you're starting too, don't forget that you personally are also an investment, right?
Yeah.
So when people are, I'm not making enough money, I don't have enough money to save, that's fine. By all means, if you don't have money that you can put into a retirement account, don't stress, because you stressing yourself about not having a retirement is not going to get you a retirement.
You've got about 80 years to live. Like, it'll work out.
Well, yeah, it'd be nice. We're both kind of boomers compared to the rest of the people in here, so 80 years would be nice. But the
getting called old. Oh my god.
But what I would say, especially for the young people in here, is count investments in yourself as you investing in your future, right?
Absolutely.
When you go and read a book and you spend the time to learn something, that's not wasted effort. That is a skill that you're developing, and you are investing in yourself in the same way taking $10, going and working at Burger King or McDonald's and making $10 and putting that in a retirement account is also an investment. You took time that you could have spent doing something else, and you worked at McDonald's and made $10. Or you took that time and you read something, and you read a book, and you developed a skill that will eventually or hopefully be marketable in a way that you can then use your future time to get a higher return on your initial investment. Because exactly like Babs is saying, opportunity calls.
Yeah.
You don't have to. It's not investing in your. Investing for retirement isn't just investing in yourself and in your surroundings and putting yourself in a position to succeed. And if you go and you try and find a job and it's difficult and you're not finding something that will ultimately give you enough money to get you to that goal, spend some time and don't, spend a year or two and don't focus on, I need to hit my $6,000 deposit amount or my $10,000 deposit amount this year.
Yeah.
Think of it as you taking that $10,000 that you could have gotten from working and put into a retirement account and count it as though you invested in yourself and you developed a skill that you can then later use in your life in the future to increase your, income, because that's ultimately what you're trying to do. You're trying to develop an income base that you can use to withdraw against. And when you retire, you are no longer collecting an income, or you're collecting a much smaller income, depending on how it is that you plan your retirement. But just because it's not in a bank account, I guess, is my point is, just because it's not in a bank account or a building or something that is an investment that you're holding, doesn't mean that you didn't invest. It just means that you invested in something that's not a tangible asset.
Yeah. Like myself, I invested in a university degree. My career path means that I kind of have to have one. There is a literally a board of people who will not let me work if I don't have this degree.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
there's literally a governing agency that will prevent me from working. So I kind of have to have the degree to do what I want to do. But I've invested my time, my energy in learning these skills for my profession that have already turned me into something I only ever dreamed of. It takes time.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm gonna target this toward 15 to 20-year-old group of people who are in here, right? Your most valuable skill right now is not probably what you think it is.
Not
like
being
when you get older.
Yeah,
Not being tired. That's very true.
Able to work 18 hours a day and sleep 6 hours.
Yeah, I could sleep 16 hours a day and still be tired. It's crazy. But if you're young, your most valuable skill is not what you think it is right now. Trust me. I guarantee you, whatever you think you're really good at right now is very likely not going to be what's going to make you money. And that's not going to be happy, and you're probably not going to spend your time doing it. And if you're not good at anything, trust me, you are. You're not. The advice I'm giving is not to say that whatever it is that you're doing is worthless.
Right now.
What I'm trying to say is that time you're spending right now developing skills, even if you're not going to use them and that's not going to be your primary driver of wealth, it still has value. And it's these intangible things that I can give you anecdotal examples of how, in high school, right, I played chess a lot. I got very good at it. And in one of my interviews, I bonded with the person who was interviewing me about that. And that's not, I don't play chess at work, but because I was good at it and it was a skill that I had developed, it made me an interesting person and someone that people wanted to work around. So trust me, the things that you're spending your time on right now, while they might not be something that can directly lead you to making more money, having hobbies and skills and things that differentiate you are investments. Don't let people tell you that your hobbies are you wasting your time. I struggled with that as a kid, as people who are, how can I be we can talk about that later. That's more of a personal but those skills that you're developing right now and those hobbies, they're things that they're things that do have value. And trust me, just because people tell you you're wasting your time doing them, it's not true. I mean, look, I'll count if you're going out to a park and smoking weed, right? And you're fucking blowing your life away. This isn't directed at you. This is directed at people who spend their time, I don't know, playing a video game or reading a book or
reading is a big
doing.
one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think. Yeah, sorry.
Just reading books is something that is super underrated. Like there is a lot of content online and videos and how to learn different skills and things, which are fantastic, especially like for physical skills. If you get to decide, I want to make a chair or I want to make a table, and you have no idea how, you can go and literally watch a video and learn. If you want to learn how to invest, there are both videos and there are books and interviews. You can just spend time absorbing content. Something great you can do at 15, once you've finished school and you've done all your homework, or if you do homework, you can be sitting in bed literally watching how to make money. Learning a skill of how to increase your either to increase your income or just increase your skill base. Like spending time, like I spent a lot of time, as I've mentioned before, investing in Magic the Gathering as a game. Like just having fun with it. I played it. It was so much fun, and the skills I've learnt from that have transitioned into CS investing, and now
Yeah,
into real life investing. It's like, oh, I can actually see the effect of time.
right. And Babs was talking about if I frag out hard enough in our 10 mans, I got people away from their computers malding, and maybe they'll do something productive. Even playing 10 mans,
The
trust me,
friendship.
having to work. If you've ever had to as an adult, like as an adult, and worked with people who are not good at communicating, it is the most frustrating thing. And trust me, it is a skill that many people do not develop, which is not malding, which is not getting angry when things are not going your
Oh,
way. So
absolutely.
believe me, if you play CS:GO and you can focus, if you want to count it as an investment, you can. Just make sure you're focusing on developing interpersonal skills
Developing your
and
teamwork.
conflict resolution. And
Yeah.
those are things that I get it sounds like I'm memeing, but
And
trust me, I'm
clear,
not.
effective
It's a very
communication.
valuable
Some,
skill to have.
something that matters in CS is giving clear, effective, concise information and communicating
Yeah.
that effectively. That is a skill that translates into so many different aspects of life. So, a lot of you will know that I am a nurse. So, that is literally one of the things that I have to do in an emergency is give clear, concise information in a really short form. That that is something that is developed under pressure as well as CS:GO. That you could use the skill in both places. It's been an investment in myself.
Yeah.
So just instead of just saying he is there or this person is hurt, like you can just say
Yeah.
you can say like if you're playing on Inferno,
X
one
and
dead
big.
banana, one more hit twice.
Yeah, exactly. And like uh like people are saying in chat, it doesn't everything you do doesn't have to have doesn't have to have a future value. There's
No,
100% you can do things that you just enjoy. I guess my point is don't let people try to tell you you're spending too much time doing things that you enjoy, and try to think about the things you're spending time on anyway. Be a little more I don't know, a little less hard on yourself, and understand that just because you're doing something that doesn't immediately have a value and you're not getting a paycheck, it doesn't mean that you're not doing something that's not valuable and you're not developing skills that can help you in the future.
yeah, absolutely. There
Yeah. So
there's so much that you can do that really just matters for your own future. You can translate skills. It's amazing what there is out there and how flexible you can actually become by playing video games, by doing things that your parents would go, "You're wasting your time."
yeah.
Who cares? Like, that while you're young, you could literally just try anything you want and do anything you want. Like the options
Yeah.
out there
So
to try and fail, just doesn't matter if you succeed or you fail. Just give it a go. The worst that happens is, oh, you decide you don't like it, or oh, this isn't for me. Meh.
yeah, and not to sound, this is going to sound like super overbearing, right? But okay, so we've established, we've established our goal. Our goal is, in our hypothetical scenario, I want to make $2.5 million, right?
Yeah,
And then, like we're describing, your largest asset when you're young is your time. So it's not your shares in the S&P. It's not your the house that you own. It's not the cars that you own. Literally the only thing of value that most people have in their, when they're 13, 15, 14, 15, 16 is just their time. So we have state mandated use of that time. We call that school, and we make you go to
Yes.
it, and you shouldn't skip it because the chances that you find something that's more productive for your future growth other than school are very low. Um, I didn't take that advice, and it definitely hurt me in the future, but stay in school, kids. But
Yeah.
regardless, if you think about it from a portfolio perspective, right? Let's say you're 60, and really the largest part of your portfolio right now isn't the time that you're going to spend working and the time you're going to spend making money because you're retired. Your portfolio in that sense, when you're retired, is all of your assets combined. When you're old, and when you're young, your portfolio is all of the time that you haven't yet spent.
Yeah.
So like we're saying, you don't have to spend all of your assets on, you know, making something that makes you more money. That's psychopathic, right? Like you can spend money on a Starbucks coffee, or
Yeah.
you can
A
spend money
five
on a
dollar
new game
coffee is
that
not
you've
going
been.
to stop you from being rich
Yeah,
or
exactly.
wealthy.
And that bothers me so much that people have turned it from structural systemic issues that are making it harder for young people to buy a house or start building equity in something to just stop buying coffee, lol, because consumer spending as a proportion of like fixed costs has decreased over the last 30
Yeah.
years. So if you think about housing costs have gone up, all of those healthcare costs, at least in the United States, healthcare costs have gone up, housing costs have gone up, wages and median income have stayed effectively relatively the
Yeah, they're
same,
pretty
accounting for
stable.
inflation. So so people 30 years ago were spending more of their income on disposable purchases and entertainment than we are now. So
Yeah.
don't feel guilty about buying something that you enjoy
Some
because trust me, the
something
boomers who are complaining that you're spending too much of that spent more when they were your age.
yeah. Something I'd actually like to point out is like learning to budget as well. When you do actually start earning some kind of money, learning to budget and effectively purchase things with that money is an important skill. So not just so don't allocate something I learned. Don't allocate your investments last. Allocate them
Yeah.
first for your future. The bills, you'll find out how to pay the bills under stress. But if you've paid your bills and you're like a little low on money, you're not going to try and drive for that extra few dollars to invest later.
Yeah, absolutely. And like saying, I've been saying college because I think it's pretty much interchangeable with trade schools. I think the fact that people who go to trade schools are viewed that those schools are viewed as somehow inferior to getting a college
God,
degree is
that
insane
I
because
I almost wish I could have gone to a trade school for like learning how to be a plumber, learning how to be an electrician, learning to be
carpentry,
yeah,
yeah.
just something. You make so much money doing that, as well as learning to be a businessman. Like learning how to run a
Yeah.
business and effectively manage money it, while making money is so undervalued. Like people just ignore that, and there's been a big push for higher education at universities that put you in put you in ridiculous debt, but you don't have
Right.
to.
Right. And that's, again, that's that cost benefit analysis that we were
Yeah,
talking about before. Is me deferring going to college and working the better financial choice, or should I go to college or go to and spend that time instead of earning, 30 or $40,000 working at a job that doesn't require a college degree or an internship or work or or 2 years in a trade school. I could defer that money and instead of working, invest it in myself and then get an even higher income. And these are the kind of things that I think you have to think more long term when you're making big life decisions like this,
yeah,
especially if you're looking at it from a financial perspective because you if you think of it like cash flows, right? Your cash flows are negative by going to college. You're spending money by going to college, and you could go to McDonald's and work and I don't dollars or whatever it is that
we make over
I feel
20 Aussie
yeah
Rubucks per
yeah
hour
I
at
kind of
Macca's.
I kind of feel like how much could a banana cost fry? What is it, like $10? But sorry, that's a joke. Like I'm kind of
Bananas
out of
like
touch
three
with what
dollars a
like
kilo.
entry wage jobs are now, but yeah, you could do that, right? But then the person who got a useful degree, and again, I say useful because there are degrees that are not useful, and that again, We talked about how investing in yourself and building skills that aren't directly transferable are totally things. I work with
Yeah.
people who have English degrees, and everyone always likes to shit on people who have English degrees. They are just as successful and smart and intelligent as I am, and they're doing just as well in their life, but they got something out of that degree that isn't immediately apparent, but that they could use to further their career. So don't let anyone tell you, I want to get a degree in a liberal art and that it's useless, because it's not. It's just you need to extract the value you need to extract the value from it in a way that isn't immediately apparent. And a
Yeah.
lot of times people get frustrated because they don't see that, they don't see that. But to get back to your point, right?
And by the way, bananas
Sorry,
are
hold on.
$1.75 a US dollars a pound here in Australia right now. If you want to convert it to freedom
I'm like
bucks.
every time I stop talking, I'm like coughing up a lung over here. So I hope it's not it's not coming through. But
You're muting yourself well. I've only got a couple of
okay,
coughs.
that's good. Right? Budgeting and doing things that don't immediately create value or don't immediately add a dollar in your pocket can ultimately make you wealthier than just working really hard, right? So if you spend your money in a way that's foolish and you're constantly making impulse purchases and somehow at the end of every month you find out you don't have any money in your pocket, it probably means that either A, you need to invest in yourself to increase your income, or B, you're buying stupid shit and you need to stop it. There's really
Speaking
no
of foolish.
there's really no intermediary. I mean, it's a scale, right? So either you're not earning enough and you need to earn more, or you're spending too much and you need to spend less. And like, it could be a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B, but ultimately those are the only two options, right? There's no
Yeah.
fucking leprechaun breaking into your house and stealing dollar bills out of your pocket. But
Speak.
I mean, if there is, again, tell me, because that's like a
that,
$1 billion. There's $1 billion thing right there.
see, there is, and it's already $1 billion thing. We got the case of the week to have a quick open of. I've got one case here. I've got the shattered web case that I've just bought a key for to open for the week. So you'd probably know Outsourced. We do one case a week. That I do open.
Sure do.
And let's say, come on, StatTrack Factory New AWP Containment Breach. Let's go. Where does money get invested for interest? That's actually a really good question by Mr. Pig. By the way, R8 Revolver Memento, well worn, yuck. Oh no, field tested.
Yikes. That's a big yikes for
That's
me.
big yikes for me as well.
There's that leprechaun. Can we get a Gaben in chat for?
Yeah, can we get some Gavins? Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Lots of Gavins. So Mr. Pig asked a very important question of where does the money get invested in for the interest? So for an example that I use for myself is ETFs, so exchange traded funds. They're a low cost way of investing. Very low cost. It's like 0.1% through Vanguard. You buy these shares, these baskets of shares, and you get paid a dividend every 3 months, 3 or 6 months. And the dividend you get is a percentage of that share's worth. You get like a 3 to 4% dividend yield out of it. So for every $100, you get, say, $3, $3 to $4, and you eventually have enough, and that money that you get buys more shares, buys more of that ETF. So that's where your interest compounds. So if the share itself costs $100, and I'd need $2,500 worth of that share to eventually be able to have enough interest to buy one more share, and then I have $2,600 worth of that share, and then I can always buy at least one more share as a growth value, which is, it takes time. Again, it's all time. $2,500 may sound like a lot to you now, but just investing small amounts often, both in yourself and when you can eventually do it into typical investments or not so typical.
Yeah. and speaking of those not so typical investments, this is why I've really wanted to push early in the podcast while people were still listening, that investing in yourself is still an investment and it still has an ROI. So I
Growling Bears
posted
in the
I
chat.
posted a link. What was that?
Growling Bears in
Yeah,
the
he
chat.
sure
His
sure is.
investment king of non typical investments.
Yeah, exactly. And when you think of what it is that you should be investing in when you're young and what's going to give you the greatest return, all in, probably the thing that's going to increase your money the most isn't investing in something tangible like a stock or an ETF. It could just be investing in yourself. It could just be going and getting a college degree. It could be going and developing a skill, learning. I know it's like a meme at this point, but learning how to code, learning how to do something that will increase your income next year greater than the income you're going to get from taking that money and instead putting it into an ETF or an exchange fund. So
Yeah,
ultimately, if you're looking at just headline interest rates, right? 100% low cost ETFs. Like I think Schwab now is at 0.02% at their fee. Like it's something great. Like there is no fee for investing in an ETF effectively. There's slippage and things like that, but those aren't really something that I would worry about if you're a long-term buyer and holder.
yeah.
Um,
If you're
but
long
yeah,
term being greater than 10 years, 10, 20 years, like that's
yeah, it's zero effectively.
yeah.
Um,
Uh,
for all
so
purposes.
Julian's bringing something up, which is an interesting point. He's only thinking about the taxes you're paying. So when you pull out the money in 20, 30 years time, and you pull out say $100,000, if you're working $100,000, you have to pay income tax anyway. Just you'll have enough. You're pulling out enough to be able to pay your taxes as well. But most countries, if you've invested for a very long time, will let you have lower tax rates. That's
And that's being tax aware and how it is that you're planning your future is 100% a step. It's just one that, at least in how I would give it, how I process my investments, I haven't gotten there yet.
yeah. I
So we're
haven't
definitely going to talk
bothered.
about it.
Yeah,
Yeah, we haven't gotten there. Usually, right?
I'm not
Start
50.
start with what your goal is. Yeah, start with what your goal is. Decide now that you have your goal, how are you going to allocate the assets that you have? If you're young, the biggest asset that you have is time. So you're going to allocate it on learning things and becoming a better person and developing those future revenue streams that are going to later be used as your investment income to make money and get your retirement going, right?
Yeah.
That's step 2. Step 3 is planning for what happens if you get hit by a fucking bus. Sorry, I know it's PG-13, but we get one F bomb
I think
every
you've said more than one
every
F bomb.
um,
That's all right.
it's figuring out it's planning and figuring out what happens if things go wrong. That's step 3, right? That's what you should be thinking about once you've decided how you're going to allocate your time, what you see yourself doing in the future. It's it's deciding what you do if your plan goes wrong. And that can be many different things, right? So if you work in a job,
Have an
if you work
emergency
if you work
fund.
in a public sector job, right? If you work in something that has job security and it's a field that's not going away
Nursing.
and you're not doing. Yeah, no, exactly. Nursing is a great example. It's some people you are going to have a job in one way, shape, or form. It might change. You might have to move slightly, or find an ancillary career that you can fit into. But you're going to have a job, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to things like a radiologist is something that's in the health field right now. That there's serious concern that AI and computer learning has made it so radiologists and people who are doing X-rays and CAT scans and things like that, a lot of that is being interpreted by the doctor and the person who's paid a very good salary to find things like precancerous cancers and precancerous growths and finding out what the issue is from there. But one of the concerns for that job field is that 20 years from now, when AI gets better and it gets to the point that it can detect things by itself, that might not be a job anymore, which is crazy when you think about it, right? um,
Absolutely crazy. I can't imagine not having a human lay eyes on it.
yeah, which is insane. But like, if from my understanding and talking to someone who's in that field, that's like a legitimate concern, which is that their job that they spent, they got their bachelor's, they got their pre-med, they did their pre-med, they did their med, they passed their tests, they spent $200,000, $300,000, might not exist 20 years from now. which is something that, you know, you have to think about when you're making these decisions. Is you need to have a fallback. And again, if you want to become if you, if you want to become a billionaire, you cannot afford a fallback. And this is why being trying to shoot to be a billionaire is usually a bad idea, because all of your time and assets and wealth have to go into just building more time, assets, and wealth, and you can't build a backup plan.
No.
You kind of have to just full on sprint and hope that you never trip, because if you do, things can go very bad, very wrong, you know, very quickly. But depending on how you plot your career path and how it is that you're allocating your assets, you might need to get some form of insurance. For most portfolios, that's not being 100% equities, right? So as you get older, you're more concerned about losing a large portion of your wealth. So over time, financial, you know, managers advise you to switch from being 100% equities to being, you know, 90
Split.
10, 80
Yeah.
20, 30. And then ultimately, as you get older, that changes, and that's a form of insurance. And then you also have things like, you know, life insurance and health insurance and all of these other things that go
All
into
these
it. But
other
that's
scams.
something that if yeah. I mean, from the perspective of just expected value, insurance is always a bad idea.
Yeah.
An insurance company will quickly go out of business if they're selling you insurance on something that has a positive expected value. The reason why you would buy insurance is because the risk to yourself is so much greater than, like, it's you're insuring against catastrophe. That's ultimately what insurance should be, you know, should be used for. Not surgical jobs. It's radiology is the big one, that is because a lot of that is interpreting, you know, x-rays and cat scans, and we're finding out that computers are doing a very good job of doing it themselves. So that might be something that doesn't have as many people working at it as, you know.
Eventually, you'll still probably have like a head radiologist.
Right. Right, but then, you know, it's not like they're, you know, that's just the example that sprung to mind. The other one would be like, you know, warehouse workers, right, or truck drivers. Like
Oh
we have,
yeah.
there's serious fears for these industries where if you're a truck driver 20 years from now, you might not have a job. You know, like that might not be a job 20 years from now. So that's what I mean. It's looking at what your plan is and deciding whether or not it's something that you should hedge against, right? It's like it's taking those systematic risks to yourself. You know, if you count yourself as part of your portfolio, hedging against the risk of you losing your job is hedging your portfolio, and that's something that if you're smart, you should be doing. You shouldn't be leaving
One way.
yourself existential risks to your future,
Yeah.
right?
One way of doing that is having an emergency fund. So
Yes.
have a fund that can cover like 6 months of expenses that is super liquid. So have that in a savings account somewhere that you can access if you lose your job, and you can pay for shit for a while. There we go. Got another word out of us.
Yeah.
You can pay for it with this emergency fund. So if you do lose your job, plan to have money there in case you lose it, so that you don't have to pay like income insurance or anything. But you're relying on yourself, and you know what your deadline is. You Because if you like get a severance package because you've been fired from a job, you don't know how long, and you don't know how long that's going to last. That's going to last a lot less than any emergency fund and plan that you make.
Right. And ultimately you insurance provider. Like you mentioned income insurance, right? Like in the US, like the big one's Aflac, right? With the fucking sorry, I said it again, my bad. I'm like
Oh.
starting to ramble, reel me in a little bit. But you're investing, you're ultimately insuring yourself when you have an emergency fund. And I can tell you from experience, someone who's very, very thankful and very blessed to be able to have one, it makes your job so much easier not having to be like, I cannot quit my job because I will be homeless in 2 months. That is a terrible position to put yourself in, and it makes you make bad decisions. Like we talked
Yeah.
about, you know, that famous, I sent it to you, that famous Terry Pratchett quote where it's like, you know, it's expensive to be poor ultimately. You know, if you can't if you can't think longer term because you're so focused on making a decision that's going, yeah, you're just so much buy. If you can't make longer term decisions and invest in a way that, you know, you're constantly buying the crappiest version of a product because you can't live without it,
Oh
ultimately
yes.
that adds up and it becomes expensive.
Yeah, that's something that I've seen discussed a lot. Like, if you're a labourer, buy a good pair of boots. That investment in yourself, it
Yeah,
it
exactly.
makes a difference. Like, it really makes a difference investing in not the cheap. Short term, it seems the cheapest thing is best. But I know Outsourced. You sent me an example of this. Could you go through that example?
Yeah, the Terry Pratchett quote from Discworld. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Here, I'll just read it out real quick. It's just a quote from a book. It's a by the way, it's a great sci-fi series. If you guys have never read it, I would definitely recommend it. So the quote is the reason that the rich were so rich, Vimes reasoned, was because they managed to spend less money. Take boots for example. He earned $38 a month plus allowances. A really good pair of leather boots cost $50, but an affordable pair of boots, which were just sort of okay for a season or two and then leaked like hell when the cardboard gave out, cost about 10. They were the kind of boots Vimes always bought and wore until the soles were so thin that he could tell that they were in Ankh-Morpork on a foggy night by the field, where in Ankh-Morpork he was on a foggy night by the fields of the cobbles. But the thing that was that the good boots lasted for years and years. A man who could afford $50 had a pair of boots that'd still be keeping his feet dry in 10 years' time, while the poor man who could only afford cheap boots would have spent $100 on boots in the same time and would still have wet feet. This was Captain Samuel Vimes' boots theory of socioeconomic unfairness. And that's kind of what we're describing, right? Which is that if you don't have a safety fund and you can't buy that good pair of boots and you're constantly spending money buying things that have a superior alternative, but you can't afford them because you don't have the equity to do it, is ultimately it's like a debt treadmill, is
Yeah.
what it is. I think the favorite one I always see on the favorite one I always see on Twitter is people who are trying to get a loan for a house, and they go to the bank and the bank says we don't think you can afford $1,000. You don't have any money saved. And they say back, well, I've been paying my landlord $1,500 a month for 5 years. That's why I can't afford to save enough money for a down payment, because I'm being charged more and I can't save the money that I would have otherwise spent had I had this new purchase. And those are the kind of things that you can avoid, and you should try to avoid as much as you can by building an emergency fund and being able to make those purchases that will ultimately benefit you in the future.
Absolutely. Oh man, Outsourced, it's been absolutely awesome to have you on. Now there is one thing that we have to do. Stino unfortunately could not be here today, so in his stead, I need the link to your positive EV chart. One sec, your spreadsheet. I'll post the link. Cool. We'll post
God,
the
I
link.
hope it's working right now.
EV. Oh, we've even got the EV command. Thanks, Hostile. So outsourced EV capsule guide. So here we go. I've got it open. So let's see. Non-autograph positive. We actually have a positive EV capsule to open. Oh my goodness. So this week you'll be able to see our capsule of the week is the DreamHack 2014 Legends with an expected value of 100.15%.
Now, okay, keep in mind, this is based off of last sale on the Steam market, and it also does not include Steam tax.
Does not include Steam tax.
Yeah, my favorite thing about this too is that this is like a Monty Hall problem, but actually no, right now this is kind of like a Monty Hall problem, by the way. If you've ever heard of like the three doors, and there's a goat behind two of them and a car behind the other one.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing. So I don't want to give any spoilers, but just because a capsule is positive EV, unless you immediately sell the results, you're better off holding the capsule. But that's like it would take like an hour to explain it in a way like that would make sense. Yeah, like it is a.
Growling is
just
correct.
Because it's positive EV doesn't mean that the best decision is to open the capsule. But besides the point.
That's the point.
Sorry.
That's all right, man. But honestly, oh my god, we've already gone over an hour. We could really talk about investing, different decisions for hours. But I think unfortunately we're gonna have to wrap up this episode for this week. Thank you so much for coming and being a guest on Positive EV.
Absolutely, this was super fun. Thank you for having me. Thank you for politely telling me that time was coming up and shifting focus, because I would have kept everyone here for hours just constantly rambling. So I'm glad someone was paying attention at the time.
I have done for the last few weeks, and I'll try and continue to do so. Well, thanks everybody for coming along and listening live in the CSGO Market Forum Discord podcast channel. I will have a link on the YouTube video that I am posting to YouTube. I'll post it in the podcast chat as well. If you're watching this on YouTube, listening to this on YouTube, you can come and join the Discord in the link in the description down below. Come join, listen to the podcast chat live. Come ask questions. I'm doing my best to try and keep this a weekly thing. I hope that everyone has enjoyed themselves, has learnt a bit about investing. There is so much to investing in money, which is why I've already spent 3 weeks just talking about different aspects of it. And we'll continue to talk about it. Thank you so much to everyone for coming around, staying around, listening, and hopefully you've all enjoyed yourselves. Mr. Outsourced, thank you very much for coming and chatting. Oh, that's all right, man. But thank you for coming. I'm going to be doing a little negative EV thing in the streams chat next, which you guys can come and watch as well with Penguini. But we'll talk about that in streams. Everyone, have yourself a wonderful day, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, bye, bro.